Welcome to Rated K, for kids, by kids, the only movie review show just for kids. And today is like the most incredible show yet because we have the big daddies of movie reviews, the kings of movie reviews, Siskel and Ebert on our show. This is terrific.
Yeah, this is great.
You know, before we started, I was just wondering, since we've never had any adults on the show, what should we call you? Like Mr. Siskel and Mr. Ebert?
Mr. Siskel, sir.
Mr. Siskel, sir? Okay, I'll call you sir.
You can just call me Roger. That'll be just fine.
You guys have first name.
Okay.
On November 26, 1975, a new show premiered on WTTW, the PBS affiliate for Chicago. Opening soon at a theater near you, a film review show, which saw two Chicago film critics from rival newspapers, Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune and Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times, in discussion as to the quality of new theatrical releases. And it was a winning formula, having two people who are clearly knowledgeable in cinema and having big personalities that butted heads from time to time made film criticism entertaining in a way that it hadn't been before.
Taxi Driver, I liked it a lot too. I think the character is significant that he plays. I thought that the film was awfully bloody and improbable at its end, and that maybe hurt the picture a little bit.
Necessarily bloody, I think.
Well, I think they could have done without. It would have been a more interesting picture if they had threatened to show the violence but not have kept it on.
But it would have been a different picture.
Yes, it would have been. A better one. Magic Flute.
Technically, this wasn't the first film review series. There was a very short-lived Australian series in 1958 called Movie Guide, and while I don't know of any offhand, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a half dozen super obscure UHF programs preceding the PBS show. And of course, movie review segments had been airing on news and magazine programming forever, some of them even with big personalities. Gene Shalit beat Siskel and Ebert to television by a few years. And of course, there are hundreds of film critics to choose from in print. Those already invested in film might prefer to turn to a Pauline Kael, or, if they had bad taste, a Rex Reed. But those critics didn't have widespread appeal outside of cinephile circles. And that's what Siskel and Ebert really nailed, making film criticism smart, enjoyable to watch, and accessible to a general audience, entertaining in its own right. The show would go through many permutations, becoming sneak previews in 1977, becoming a national show in 1978, and then becoming one of the highest-rated weekly entertainment programs of all time. After which Siskel and Ebert left PBS and revised the concept as At the Movies in 1982. Siskel and Ebert weren't just film critics, they were proper celebrities, interviewed and spoofed and loved by millions. Even kids knew who they were. So when Nickelodeon created their own film review show, Rated K, for kids, by kids, in 1986, the idea of a crossover episode between their show and Siskel and Ebert would have been very appealing.
Oh, I thought it was
The show is for kids only, so I think I should probably sound like one. Gene does that all the time. It's not hard for him.
Try cracking your voice a little bit. No, Gene will be fine.
Well, what we're going to do today is take a look at a whole bunch of movies that have come out this spring, and we're going to see how our opinions differ, us being the kids and you guys being the adults. And the first movie we're going to take a look at is Making Mr. Right. Alright, on this one, you gave it 1 thumbs up and 1 thumbs down, and we gave it an S for sicko and an R for reject.
Originally airing sometime in April of 1987, the Siskel and Ebert Rated K special saw 3 Rated K regulars, Mark Shanahan, Matt Nespol, and Rebecca Schwager, comparing notes with the experienced Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert on past films they had all reviewed. These included Making Mr. Right, where John Malkovich plays a robot who falls in love, Project X, where Matthew Broderick and Helen Hunt saves a chimpanzee from military experimentation, Wild Thing, where Robert T. Bag Nepper plays an urban Tarzan. And finally, The Secret of My Success, the Michael J. Fox capitalism comedy. Right away you can tell that the Rated K kids are so completely outclassed. Siskel and Ebert are nice enough, but at no point do they dumb down their rhetoric just because they're talking to children. For example, Mark goes on about how he didn't like an actress's hairstyle, and Roger Ebert challenges him about it.
Because I was looking at her hair color the whole time.
Well, why weren't you looking at her face?
Well,
What are you, a hairdresser or a movie critic?
No, well, you know, I'd sit there and I'd watch it and I couldn't tell whether she was doing a good job or not because I'd be going, ooh, look at that hair.
Well, I think that, actually you should probably have broadened out your scope a little bit and looked a little bit more at the rest of her.
Okay, look at...
Then Matt starts going on about how violence in one of the movies was totally radical, the greatest thing he's ever seen, and Ebert is all, really? Really? Are you sure about that?
Matt, I want to ask you this question. Have you ever in your travels encountered the word hyperbole?
Hyperbole, yeah, some big word.
That would be, for example, an example of the guy killing the rats with an umbrella was the most amazing thing you ever saw. There must have been something you've seen that was more amazing.
Well, in the movie, I thought that was great. I haven't seen killing like this in
and
like
so
such
you
a long
thought
time.
that was good.
Yeah.
But making love with an android is gross.
Well, I didn't see that
but
movie.
But killing
so
Chinaman with an umbrella is okay.
Yeah, it really is. I have no problem
so
with that.
basically you're just into stimulus, right? If
I'm
it's
just
coming
into
in,
abuse.
you like it.
Yeah, it's because that's the way. I mean, if I'm having a good time, then it's okay.
Well, then you have more in common with the android than you realize.
Hey, that's all right.
Actually, it's pretty much always Ebert taking point on this. Siskel drops in his 2 cents from time to time, but Ebert, ever the wise ass, is here to make sure these kids know exactly how unqualified they are doing this. My favorite thing he does here is casually drop figures from classic Hollywood, actors that literal children of the 1980s almost certainly do not know about.
And she was pert, she was smart, she was spiffy, she looked like kind of a young Susan Hayward, an actress who made movies many years ago. You know, W.C. Fields once said he would never appear, or he hated to appear in movies with children, animals, and women with plunging necklines, because then nobody would ever look at him.
It's hard not to see this episode as an absolute deconstruction of Rated K, intentional or not. Nickelodeon's film review show came in at a very awkward point in Nickelodeon's history, after Jerry Laybourne took over the channel from Cy Schneider, but before the Nicktoon years, when the channel was still experimenting with what a cable channel for kids even meant. One idea they tried for a while were shows actually made by kids, hosted by actual children with minimal show business training, in order to keep them authentic. I can see the appeal of that on paper, but in practice, there's very little value in it. It was effectively trying to make a product out of those casual conversations about movies you have with your friends during the lunch period in junior high. Not exactly deep or well thought out, but who cares? It's just chatting with friends. But when you make that into a TV show, you're not learning anything, you're not expanding your knowledge of film, and you're not even participating in the discussion. You're just eavesdropping on other kids who aren't very smart. It's honestly a little condescending, as if putting kids in front of the camera makes up for a poor program. It's odd to say this, considering its reputation, but the earlier Silver Ball era of Nickelodeon was a lot more respectful to kids. The shows may have been a bit more boring in an attempt to be educational, but they weren't low-effort pandering. Stand By, Lights, Camera, Action was an adult-hosted show, but it was a fun deep dive into making of popular movies. You were always learning something. A segment from Livewire was actually going around Twitter not too long ago, with host Fred Newman interviewing horror movie special effects artist Tom Savini. And a lot of people today seemed impressed in how direct and honest and informative the interview was. Say what you want about the Silver Ball era shows, but they did not talk down to their young audience. Rated K? Kinda did, hoping that the novelty of seeing normal kids giving their thoughts on movies would make up for the fact that their thoughts weren't all that interesting. Having Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert on the show put that into stark relief in a way that I'm pretty sure the producers didn't intend. Or at least that's the impression I have with the footage available. Unfortunately, Rated K was a show with no home video presence, and all the episodes available on YouTube, most of which I uploaded myself, were those recorded off of original broadcasts, and not all of them are complete. The Siskel and Ebert episode is missing the final handful of minutes, right around the time they'd be talking about the secret of my success. And while I doubt those lost minutes would have changed the direction the episode was going, I have to be fair to it. Maybe there was some kind of planned pivot where Roger Ebert encouraged the kids to follow their passions in film and how they were off to a great start. I wouldn't put money on it, but you never know. What I do know is that when I was a young kid, I watched the hell out of the Disney-produced 90s version of At the Movies. Siskel and Ebert's dynamic was entertaining, and I typically learned something new about cinema every episode. This led me to reading Ebert's various books, which led me to reading other books on film, and before you know it, I was marathoning the Criterion Collection right out of high school. If I was watching Rated K in my more formative years, I doubt it would have opened any doors for me. There was nothing to learn from Rated K. It didn't offer an avenue to build interest in cinema and performance and art. Nickelodeon would drop this whole kids making their own television show concept going into the 90s, with shows like Nick News returning hosting duties to adults, and shows that were led by kids used talented show business kids and not your average American junior high student. Save those for game show contestants. The Siskel and Ebert episode is the perfect example of why Rated K didn't work. Something I went to at length in the official Knacks episode on the show. Because, of course, this was just a sample.